right, Lisa and I called an audible this morning. So I am going to do the reflection, and it's not a personal reflection. It's by Amy Petrie Shaw, and it's titled, God Gave Me a Word. And she writes, I was talking to God the other day, because we're cool like that. And God said, hey, I want you to tell people something. And I was kind of busy, so I pretended like I didn't hear. And God poked me again and said, I'm not kidding. Pay attention. Because while we're cool, we aren't cool like that, and I know when I have pushed it way too far. So I put my coffee cup down and I turned around. And God said, let me hang a word around your neck so that everyone can see it. And you better speak it when you're out, because I'll know if you don't. And it will be heavy, so heavy on your soul. And a word was hung around my neck to take out to people standing in the streets. A word was preached in my ear and laid into my mouth and burned into my heart until all I could see was the shape of the word, and the word was all. And the word was love. And God said, now get out, because you don't have all day, and the word is just going to get heavier. And you got some work yet to do. So I'm taking my word out into the world. Love came down on this green earth. Love came down and turned over tables and set the world on its end. Love made it clear that it was the word for the poor and the brokenhearted, for the queer boy and the angry girl. Love was the word for the late-night hookers and the long-haul truckers, for the heroin junkies and the runaway cutters. Love was the word for all of the screwed up and pushed over and too tired and I can't take it no more. Love was the word for the HIV patient and for the man with no papers. Love was the word for me and you, for the saints and the sinners and the scramblers in between. Love came down and made a way for there to be a way. And then love said, we are never going back. He who has ears, let him hear. See, love said when we are all a part of something bigger, and if you cannot rise with us, if you cannot love with us, then you should get the hell out of the way, because we aren't going anywhere, and you are in the path. He who has ears, let him hear. Love came down for the world to know, and I'm holding out this world. So even when you and God are just like that, you can't pretend you didn't know. I cannot put this word down. Not for a politician spewing hatred, not for a minister vomiting out bile in the costume of a saint, not for money or country or for kin. I'm holding the word love in my mouth. Because the next time I see God, I want to be able to say, you gave me a word and I carried it just the way you asked me. You gave it to me and I took it. You showed it to me, to everyone I met. You gave it to me and I showed it to her, to Zer, to Z, to them, to Zim, to them. I showed it to them and they and those over there. I never put it down. I can never put this word down. I was talking to God the other day because we're cool like that. And God said, hey, I want you to tell people something. And I was still kind of busy, so I pretended like I didn't hear. And God said, I'm not kidding. Pay attention. Because while we're cool like that, we aren't that cool. And I know when I have pushed it too far, so I put my coffee cup down and I turned around. And then God gave me a word. And now I'm giving it to you. So start moving. Amen. Thank you, Gabby. Let us take a moment for silent contemplation. Thank you. Which love language do you speak? As humans, we express and receive our love through what psychology calls love languages. 5. It's important to know our love language when we are in intimate relationships with one another. It's important to know because it is the best way to show love to that person, by speaking their love language. Telling them you love them is one thing, but showing them is another. And there are 5 different love languages. The first one is words of affirmation. And I'm going to go through all of them, and you may know some of this, but it's going to take a turn eventually. You know how I do. People with words of affirmation as a love language value verbal acknowledgments of affection, including I love yous and compliments, words of appreciation and verbal encouragement, and often frequent digital communication like texting and social media engagement. Written and spoken words of affirmation shows affection to people that matter the most because it makes them feel understood and appreciated. So if you have words of affirmation as your love language, people who write to you and speak to you matter the most to you, because you feel understood and appreciated. The second love language is quality time. Now, this love language is all about giving your undivided attention to that special someone without the distraction of television, phone screens, or any other outside interference. And it doesn't have to be a special person, it just has to be someone, right? Someone sitting next to you even. The third love language is acts of service. And this love language is for people who believe that actions speak louder than words. Unlike those who prefer to hear how much they're cared for, people on this list like to be shown that they're appreciated. Doing smaller or bigger chores for them to make their lives easier or more comfortable is highly cherished by these folks who have that love language. The fourth love language is gifts. And people whose love language is receiving gifts enjoy being gifted something that is both physical and meaningful, right? And the key is to give meaningful things to them that matter and reflect their values, not necessarily yours, okay? The final love language is physical touch. Now, people who communicate their appreciation through this language, when they feel consent to it, feel appreciated when they're hugged, kissed, or cuddled. And they feel the value of feeling warmth and comforted that comes with physical touch. So today, the big question is, how do we express these love languages in the larger community with those for which we don't have an intimate relationship with? You know, how are those love languages expressed in our spiritual community? I tend to believe that in order to love and to truly love, we must practice each love language, right? And I already told you what they were. Now I want you to imagine what this could look like if you are attentive and intentional with your acts, your gifts, your time, your talents, and your words. Now, for words of affirmation, it is important for us to be kind with our words and to use them to empower each other instead of destroying each other. Words and the things we say to each other are paramount, right? For example, imagine you had me on the welcoming committee at the door who did not use their words to welcome folks in. Those folks may not make it past the door. Words of affirmation breathe life into the spirit. So we must be kind with our words and be tender with others, not just those you know, but those you don't, and especially those you don't like. Now I want you to imagine living out the love language of quality time in this spiritual community. But instead of spending quality time doing the things you absolutely love, try spending it doing some things you might struggle with. For example, if you hate doing groundskeeping, do not volunteer to clean up the yard. Or maybe you should, right? You might inspire someone else. You might make a new friend, and you might even gain a new hobby. Quality time or intentional time being present with others in your spiritual community is a blessing that probably was undervalued until the pandemic. The pandemic, when we couldn't be together, is where we realized the central importance of the communities where folks gather for a common purpose, and in this case, beloved community or church. We gather for a beloved community, but for a community to be beloved, it has to be nurtured. It has to be poured into. It has to have space for all of the differences. And we do that by spending intentional time nurturing a spiritual space for all beings. I'm going to assume that's why y'all are here this morning. As Unitarian Universalists, I think I speak for a lot of us when I say that the one love language that we as a denomination have become proficient at is acts of service. I said proficient. We haven't mastered it. We're good at it. We're great at it, actually. But we still got a long ways to go. One example is that we've had 5 Unitarian presidents of the United States. 5 United States presidents who've identified as a Unitarian. They were John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, John Quincy Adams, Millard Fillmore, and William Taft. And while he did not specifically identify with any organized religion, Abraham Lincoln had Universalist leanings. Another example of our acts of service is the ordination in 1863 of Olympia Brown, a Universalist minister, and the first woman to be regularly ordained by any denomination. And my personal favorite, Dr. Benjamin Rush, who was a signer of the Declaration of Independence, also a physician and considered to be the father of American psychiatry. Acts of service is in our denominational genealogy. It is who we are. And if you're here to just sit and to look pretty on Sundays, Unitarian Universalism isn't the place for you. We work really hard to make the world a better place. However, we still have a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do. Some of the work is apparent in our small group ministries and other spiritual programming within our community, but we can't do it alone. We need to rally the others. Those people who don't know about Unitarian Universalism but understand acts of service and understand working together for the common goal of love. Where are those folks? That's who we need. This brings me to our 4th love language, which is gifts. And in a spiritual community, when we think about gifts, we think about money, the tithe, right? True. We need money to sustain our communities. But we also need the gifts each of you offer. Some of you have unique gifts and abilities, such as being an accountant. You could actually help someone learn to create a budget, or a handy person who could help spruce up the place, or a lawyer who could offer advice to someone in legal need in the congregation, or a social worker who could offer resources to new folks in the area, a counselor who can offer a listening ear for a few hours a week. Those are the folks that we need in community. Gifts don't have to be monetary. And in fact, to be a thriving community is one where you have everyone using their gifts collectively to make the community better. If we have 10 cooks in here, no one in this community should ever starve. That's 10 different meals on any given day to feed 10 different people. Plus, if my mom's cooking, that 10 is going to feed 100. And if we use our gift wisely and collectively, we could have an impact on hunger and homelessness in the area. And if we did it right, imagine the global impact. The final love language is tricky, given the history of some religious traditions and personal traumatic experiences for some folks. Physical touch, when consented to, can be very healing and therapeutic. And in this case, I want you to think about the persons affected with leprosy in the Bible. So if you ever read the Bible, there's stories about folks that were affected with leprosy in the community. And they were ostracized, they were marginalized, they were kicked out. So for reference, I'm going to talk briefly. Luke 5, verses 12 and 13 reads, "Once when he, Jesus, was in one of the cities, a man covered with a skin disease was there. And when he saw Jesus, he bowed with his face to the ground and begged him, 'Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean.' So then Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him and said, 'I am willing, be made clean.' Immediately the skin disease left him," according to that word. And in this case, all Jesus did was touch him, and he was healed. Now, we may or may not have that kind of ability. But it is said when you hug someone that the hormone oxytocin, often called the love hormone, is released. And it's the reason why being hugged by someone we love, or even when we're in distress, feels so good. So when you're down, give someone a squeeze with consent, of course, and you just might be healed. It may just be as simple as a hug. Expressing our love languages in community will take a lot of practice. Let's just be honest. Especially if we aren't sure what our own love language is. But I suspect we'll get a lot of practice to learn how to love because of our proposed Article 2 amendments, which puts love at the center of this faith. And what does that mean for us? If love is at the center of our faith, then it is important to learn how to give and receive love in healthy ways. Love is an action. And it's important that we learn what makes us less loving and what's less likely to show us love, and to show love and to work on it. That's the holy work. No one is perfect. And the expectation isn't to love everything in its entirety. But the work is to figure out what are your personal barriers to being loving. Because there are people right now in your life that may not feel loved by you. There may even be people sitting next to you that may not feel loved by you. The practical work is remembering people's pronouns and new names and embracing the cross-dressers like myself. I can laugh at that. It's okay. Making spaces and places accessible for all people, not just for those who are preferred. Being curious but not offensive. And honoring the differences among us and embracing it is a love in action. So if love is at the center of our faith and we profess our love through our covenants to this congregation, the communities, and the individuals together in this web of interconnection, then it is important for us to check ourselves. If we say we are this welcoming community, then let's work on the things that make us less welcoming. But to do that, we really and truly need to be honest with ourselves and each other. It's important to learn our neighbor's love language as well as ours, because love begets love and peace begets peace. And I'm going to close with some affirmations about love by a person named Enfleshed. And it's titled Love. And they write, "Love cannot be bought or sold. It does not make profit. Love does not hide from truth. Love dives deep. Love takes on flesh. Love is queer. Love is platonic. Love is erotic. Love is asexual. Love confronts evil. Love delights in pleasure. Love touches and weeps and flirts and feeds and creates. Love is risky. Love challenges systemic evil in all its forms. Love is simple, but it's not easy. Love rises up. Love apologizes. Love believes. Love corrects. Love holds accountable. Love pays reparations. Love heals. Love tells a story. Love embraces everyone, every creature, every creation. It knows ultimately. It knows intimately, and it holds us collectively. Love transcends every boundary that seeks to confine it. It will not tolerate violence in its name. It does not harm, and love only sets free. Folks, today and each day going forward, be guided by all the things that love encompasses. Embrace it and express it, because love is more than just a word. Love is an all-day spiritual practice, and it does not exist for us to hoard it to ourselves. Love is divinely free and necessary for our survival. Blessed be, and amen. And let us now